On the night of August 25, 1986, 1,146 people died before dawn. Not a door was broken, not a single building was touched. In the village of Nyos, investigators would later find meals left on tables, still arranged, still warm. Even the insects in the grass were dead. A farmer named Joseph Nkwine had lived in the valley below Lake Nyos his entire life. He went to sleep that Thursday night the way he had every night before it. He would wake up 3 hours later on the floor, unable to move his legs, unable to speak. His daughter was still in her bed. She would not survive the morning. Lake Nyos sits in the northwest corner of Cameroon, inside the crater of a dormant volcano, at an elevation of roughly 1,090 meters. The water is clear and blue, ringed by green hills. The communities in the valley below, Nyos, Subum, Char, Cam, had farmed these slopes for generations. By August 1986, roughly 4,000 people lived within the radius of what scientists would eventually call the danger zone. None of them knew such a zone existed. Beneath the lake's placid surface, volcanic springs from deep in the Earth's crust had been seeping carbon dioxide upward for centuries. In most lakes, dissolved gas disperses, circulated by wind, temperature, and seasonal turnover. But Lake Nyos is different. Its cold, heavy bottom water never fully mixes with the warmer surface layer above. The two sit stacked, separated by a boundary that rarely breaks. So the gas stayed. Year by year, the deepest water grew more saturated. It had reached the pressure of a sealed bottle of carbonated water, one no one yet knew to open. Joseph Nkwine had no reason to think about any of this when he sat down to dinner on the evening of August 21st. Around 9:30 in the evening, a low rumble moved through the hills. Witnesses in the outer villages described it as lasting 15 to 20 seconds. Steady, then gone. Some people looked up, most did not. Then the lake moved. A column of water erupted from the surface. Geologists would later measure the height at roughly 100 meters. A wave at least 25 meters tall stripped the vegetation from the southern shore. The water turned brown, then red, as iron-rich sediment from the lake bottom oxidized in the open air. What came next was invisible. Between 100,000 and 300,000 tons of carbon dioxide rose from the lake in a single convulsive release. CO2 is heavier than air. It does not disperse upward. It flows downward, filling hollows, pooling in valleys, moving like water finding its level. The cloud traveled north at 20 to 50 kilometers per hour, roughly 50 meters thick. In Lower Nyos, of all the families sleeping in the village that night, one woman and her child survived. Everyone else was already gone. Somewhere in Subum, Joseph Nkwine smelled something he would later describe only as something terrible. He made it a few steps before his legs stopped working. He fell. He would not remember anything else until the following morning, when a neighbor knocked on his door. Insects, birds, livestock, every animal in the cloud's path was dead. Buildings untouched, plants untouched. Whatever passed through here that night left the world looking entirely normal from the outside. The first investigators to reach the villages arrived to a scene no one had a framework for. Bodies lay where people had fallen. Dinner plates were on tables. Cattle lay collapsed in the fields, dead where they had stood. One researcher described it as the aftermath of a neutron bomb. Everything structural intact, everything living gone. Joseph Nkwine was one of the survivors in Subum, the same village where many others did not. He described waking on the floor, finding stains on his trousers, wounds on his body that he could not account for. He had heard his daughter making a strange sound, a kind of labored snoring, before he lost consciousness. He had tried to cross the room to reach her. He did not make it in time. Investigators noted that those who survived tended to be on higher ground, in upper rooms, or had fallen at elevated positions. The gas, being denser than air, had settled first into the lowest pockets of the valley. A few meters of elevation, sometimes less, had been the difference. The blood found around the mouths and noses of victims was not a sign of violence. It was the body's final response to oxygen deprivation. The lake itself had dropped by a meter. Its surface, normally blue, had turned deep red and remained that color for days. George Kling, then at Duke University, was among the first American scientists to reach Lake Nyos. His initial assessment pointed toward a submarine volcanic eruption. The lake sits on the Cameroon volcanic line. a chain of geologically active formations, and witnesses had reported a rumbling and a smell of sulfur. A volcanic event seemed like the most coherent explanation. Then Haraldur Sigurdsson of the University of Rhode Island ran isotopic analyses on water samples from the lake. The CO2, he found, had originated in the Earth's mantle, not from an active vent, but from ancient magmatic sources dissolving slowly into the water over centuries. Kling's volcanic theory could not survive that finding. The eruption, in any conventional sense, hadn't happened. A second theory stepped forward. A fresh landslide scar was visible on a hillside above the lake. Hundreds of tons of rock, recently fallen into the water. A rockfall of that scale could destabilize the stratified layers and trigger a catastrophic release. The evidence seemed physical, visible, datable, except the sediment at the lake bottom was undisturbed. A rockfall large enough to set off this kind of release would have churned the floor of the lake. There was nothing. The third candidate was the weather. August is Cameroon's rainy season, and a sudden influx of cool rainwater could have disrupted the lake's layering. A cold plunge through the surface, striking the saturated bottom water like a finger tapping an overfilled glass. Plausible in theory, but the trigger required an external event that no investigation has been able to confirm, which left a fourth possibility, and for some researchers, the most unsettling one, that nothing external triggered it at all. That by 1986, the CO2 concentration in the lower water had reached a threshold at which the stratification simply failed on its own, at random, in response to nothing. If that is true, there was no warning to give. No earthquake, no storm, no rockfall, just time and accumulation and a quiet night in August. 40 years later, the mechanism, a limnic eruption, carbon dioxide violently coming out of solution, is no longer in dispute. The question of what initiated it remains technically open. A degassing pipe was installed at Lake Nyos in 2001, siphoning CO2-saturated water from the depths and letting it vent safely at the surface. 2 more pipes followed in 2011. As of 2019, researchers determined that a single self-sustaining pipe is sufficient to maintain safe CO2 levels indefinitely. No pump required, no external power. The lake keeps venting itself. Joseph Inquain spoke to researchers and journalists for decades after the night of August 21st. The smell, the floor, the sound his daughter made. The account never changed. In the years after 1986, the Cameroonian government relocated most survivors from the valley, citing the risk of recurrence. Many were never allowed to return to their land. The pipe runs continuously, day and night. If you stand near it in quiet weather, you can hear the water moving through it. Next, a place where nothing violent happened, nothing collapsed. But in a span of 12 years, an entire community simply walked away and never came back.